Right now, somewhere on this planet, someone is clapping a rhythm, humming a tune, or tapping their fingers on a table without even realizing they're doing it. That reflex, the urge to make a beat, to turn silence into sound with structure, isn't something you learned from a music class. It's older than language. It might be older than almost anything else we consider distinctly human. Older than the wheel, older than writing, older than the idea of a house. So here's the real question. When did humans first start making music on purpose? Because the answer reaches back much further than most people would ever guess. Long before writing, long before farming, long before anything resembling a city ever existed anywhere on Earth. Start with the oldest confirmed evidence we actually have. In a cave called Hohlefels, in what's now Germany, archaeologists recovered a flute carved from the wing bone of a griffin vulture, dating back roughly 42 to 43,000 years. Whoever made it carefully hollowed out the bone, then cut 5 precise finger holes along its length, spaced with genuine, deliberate care. This wasn't a random tube someone happened to blow into. It was a real instrument, built with a specific understanding of how spacing changes pitch. Researchers who reconstructed a working replica found it could produce a genuine musical scale, multiple distinct notes, not just one flat tone. 42,000 years ago, someone sat down with a bird bone, a cutting tool, and enough patience to carve something that could genuinely make music, working in cold conditions, likely by firelight, on a task with zero immediate survival payoff beyond the sound itself. And Hohlefels wasn't alone. Nearby sites in the same region of Germany, including Geissenklostele, have produced additional flutes from roughly the same era, some carved from mammoth ivory instead of bone, an even harder, more difficult material to work into something this precise. Multiple instruments, multiple materials, multiple sites, all clustered around the same tens of thousands of years. This wasn't an isolated fluke. It was a genuine, established craft. Here's where the story gets more contested, and more interesting because of it. At a site called Divja Babe in what's now Slovenia, researchers found a hollowed cave bear bone with a row of holes punched through it, dating to somewhere between 50 and 60,000 years ago. If that date holds up, it would place the object well before modern humans ever arrived in that specific region of Europe, which means it would have been made by Neanderthals, not by us. That claim has been genuinely, fiercely debated for decades. Some researchers argue the spacing and shape of the holes line up remarkably well with what you'd expect from a deliberately made flute, evenly spaced in a way that would be a strange coincidence for random damage to produce. Other researchers argue the holes actually match the bite pattern of a cave hyena or a similar carnivore gnawing on the bone, an entirely natural, non-musical explanation, and point to similar puncture patterns found on other bones at carnivore den sites nearby. Both sides have published detailed analyses, measured the spacing down to the millimeter, and modeled exactly how a hyena's jaw would need to close to produce that pattern. Neither has fully convinced the other. It's honest, ongoing scientific disagreement, the kind where you genuinely can't hand-wave away either position. And it's a useful reminder that not every intriguing artifact comes with a clean, settled answer attached. But separate from that single contested bone, there's other evidence that Neanderthals may have had the biological capacity for music regardless. Researchers have recovered Neanderthal hyoid bones, the small, delicate bone in the throat that supports the muscles used in vocalization, and found them nearly identical in shape to our own. Studies of Neanderthal inner ear structure suggest a hearing range well suited to the frequencies of human speech and, quite plausibly, music. None of that proves Neanderthals were composing songs around a fire, but it does mean the biological hardware for it may have existed in more than just our own specific branch of the human family tree. Step back from any single artifact for a moment, though, because instruments are almost certainly not where music actually began. Before you carve a flute, you need something far simpler: rhythm. Clapping your hands, slapping your thighs, stomping your feet, striking two rocks together. None of that requires carving, drilling, or any specialized tool of any kind, and all of it produces a genuine, structured beat, which means the true origin of music likely predates every single artifact we've ever found, stretching back into a period that left no physical trace behind at all. simply because clapping doesn't fossilize. That raises an obvious question. If music doesn't require any tools at all, why would evolution favor it? Sound alone doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm. On the surface, spending real time and energy making structured noise looks like a strange thing for natural selection to preserve. One influential answer comes from evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford. Dunbar is better known for a different idea: the maximum size a human social group can realistically maintain stable relationships within. But a related piece of his research focuses specifically on grooming. Among primates, physical grooming, picking through fur, cleaning it carefully, is a primary way individuals build and maintain trust with each other. And it takes up a genuinely significant chunk of a primate's entire waking day. The problem is that grooming only works one-on-one. It doesn't scale. As early human groups grew larger, spending enough one-on-one grooming time to maintain trust across the whole group would have eaten up nearly every waking hour, leaving no time left over for hunting, gathering, or anything else survival actually required. Dunbar's hypothesis is that vocal behavior, rhythmic chanting, humming, eventually singing, may have evolved as a kind of vocal grooming, something that let far more people bond together simultaneously than physical touch alone ever could. A group singing or chanting together experiences a real, measurable synchrony. You don't have to touch every single person individually to feel connected to the whole group anymore. That idea connects directly to modern neuroscience. When people sing, chant, or drum together in a synchronized way, their brains release oxytocin and endorphins, the same general chemical family involved in social bonding and pain relief. Heart rates measurably synchronize between participants. Researchers have documented that group musical activity can noticeably increase how much people trust and cooperate with each other immediately afterward, even among people who were complete strangers just minutes earlier. If you've ever felt a genuine surge of connection singing along with a crowd at a concert or chanting along with a stadium full of strangers, that reaction likely isn't coincidental. It's an old piece of shared biology getting triggered by an old familiar kind of stimulus. For small, tightly knit ancient human groups, where trust and cooperation were directly tied to actual survival, anything that reliably strengthened group cohesion carried real, tangible value. A group that could bond quickly, coordinate a hunt smoothly, and settle internal conflict without violence had a genuine survival advantage over one that couldn't. Music may have been one of the specific tools that made that kind of rapid, large-scale bonding possible in the first place. There's a second major evolutionary explanation worth taking seriously, and it comes from an even older source, Charles Darwin himself. In his 1871 book, The Descent of Man, Darwin proposed that musical ability might function similarly to how elaborate birdsong works in many other species, as a signal of fitness used specifically in mate selection. A complex, well-controlled voice in this view demonstrates genuine underlying qualities: healthy lungs, fine motor control, precise breath management, real cognitive capability. Under this theory, music wouldn't have evolved for group bonding at all, but as something closer to a mating display, not entirely unlike a peacock's elaborate tail. These two theories aren't necessarily in direct competition with each other. Plenty of researchers today think both mechanisms plausibly played a real role at different points and possibly reinforced each other over time. A trait that helps you attract a partner and also helps your entire group bond, trust each other, and survive together is a trait that gets reinforced from multiple directions simultaneously, which might help explain why music turns out to be so deeply, stubbornly universal across virtually every human culture ever studied. And it really is universal, to a genuinely striking degree. In 2019, a research team led by Samuel Mayer at Harvard University published a large cross-cultural study analyzing recordings of music from hundreds of different societies across the entire planet, spanning small-scale hunter-gatherer groups all the way through large industrialized nations. What they found was remarkable. Certain broad categories of song show up again and again, independently, in cultures with no historical contact with each other whatsoever. Lullabies meant to soothe infants to sleep. Dance songs built for coordinated group movement. Healing songs used in ritual or medical contexts. Love songs. These general categories weren't confined to any single region or cultural lineage. They kept independently emerging over and over on completely separate continents, built from entirely different scales, instruments, and languages, yet still falling into strikingly similar functional categories every single time. Take lullaby specifically. Mayer's research found that people, even without any specific musical training at all, could reliably identify a lullaby as a lullaby, even when it came from a culture completely unfamiliar to them, one they'd never been exposed to before in their lives. Something about the specific structure of a lullaby, generally slower tempo, simpler and more repetitive melodic patterns, a particular kind of gentle, soothing quality, seems to cross cultural boundaries in a way most learned behaviors simply don't. That points towards something genuinely deep and biological sitting underneath it, not just a cultural habit passed down and copied from one group to another. This pattern of independent invention shows up clearly in instruments too, not only in song types. Take the didgeridoo, developed by Aboriginal Australian cultures, with archaeological and rock art evidence suggesting a history stretching back at least 1,000 years, and quite possibly considerably longer, entirely independent of anything happening anywhere else on Earth at the time. Drums, in wildly different specific forms, developed independently across Africa, across Asia, and across the Americas, each region arriving at broadly the same basic underlying idea. Stretch a material tight, strike it, and you get a controllable, expressive percussive sound. Stringed instruments, built on the basic physical principle of a vibrating string producing a specific, controllable pitch, developed independently in multiple different regions as well, from simple hunting bow-derived instruments to elaborately built resonating chambers, each culture arriving at broadly the same physical solution through its own separate route, using whatever local materials happen to be on hand: gut, sinew, plant fiber, hollowed wood, stretched hide. When a specific behavior turns up again and again, independently, across cultures separated by entire oceans with no meaningful contact between them, that's usually a strong signal that the behavior is tapping into something universal about how the human brain and body actually work. Not just a good idea that happened to spread by chance from one lucky starting point. So think about the full progression here. Long before any flute, before any drum, before any instrument of any kind existed, there was almost certainly clapping, chanting, humming, simple vocal rhythm requiring absolutely no tools at all. At some point, people began deliberately shaping objects specifically to make that same basic impulse louder, more precise, and more expressive. A hollow bone, a taut hide stretched over a frame, a string pulled tight enough to hum with a controllable, specific pitch. The tools changed dramatically over time and across different regions. The underlying drive pushing people to keep making them apparently didn't change nearly as much. And once people had real instruments in hand, music didn't just stay a private, personal activity. It became deeply woven into nearly the entire structure of ancient life. Ceremonies used music to synchronize entire large ritual events, coordinating the timing and emotional tone of everyone present simultaneously. Music accompanied both mourning and celebration, funerals and weddings, drawing directly on that same underlying capacity for synchronized emotional experience shared across an entire group at once. Work songs helped coordinate genuinely difficult, repetitive physical labor, keeping a rowing crew or a construction team moving in careful unison. Music built and reinforced group identity, giving a specific community its own genuinely distinct, recognizable sound, its own particular scales, rhythms, and instruments that visibly, audibly, marked exactly who belonged and who didn't.
Before the great
None of
darkness,
that
the sky
required
was
writing
filled with
anything
light.
down.
We hunted the
A
mammoth
song could
across the
carry
frozen
real
plains.
historical information, practical warnings, or moral lessons across many generations with impressive accuracy, using rhythm and melody as genuine functional memory aids. The same basic
London
principle
Bridge is
that makes a
falling down,
jingle
falling
or a
down,
nursery
falling
rhyme
down.
so
London
much
Bridge
easier
is
to remember
falling down, my
today
fair
than a
lady.
plain, unstructured list of facts ever is. So, was there a single defining moment when humans invented music? Almost certainly not. In the same way, there was likely no single defining moment when humans first started using fire, or first started using language. It was gradual, and it very likely started with nothing more than a human body. Two hands clapping together, a foot stamping rhythmically against packed earth, a voice rising and falling in a way that felt genuinely good to make and genuinely good to hear. Somewhere along that long, gradual path, people began deliberately shaping the world around them specifically to do that same basic thing more precisely, more loudly, and with far greater range and expressive nuance. A bird bone carved by careful, patient hands more than 40,000 years ago is simply one of the earliest surviving physical traces of an impulse that's very likely dramatically older than the bone itself. An impulse that, as far as we can tell, has never once actually stopped. That reflex you have right now, the one that makes you tap your foot without even noticing, or hum along under your breath to a song you only half remember, connects you directly to something that has been running continuously inside our species for tens of thousands of years, probably considerably longer. It survived the end of the Ice Age. It survived the invention of agriculture, the rise and fall of entire empires, and the invention of recorded sound itself. It's still running quietly right now, in you, completely unprompted, exactly the way it's been running in every single human being who ever lived before you. So, what's the last song that actually gave you chills? Tell me honestly in the comments. If stories like this genuinely interest you, hit like. It helps the channel more than you'd probably think. And subscribe if you want more of how deep, strange, and genuinely ancient the ordinary parts of your life actually are.